Want to make sure you know to look away for a little bit here. This is what the bullseye rash looks like. Only present in about 10% of cases, and it's going to look different on people with more melanin than in this image. So Black and Indigenous people and people of color often go undiagnosed because of this, even though the bullseye rash is only present in about 10% of cases. Sorry, just to interrupt myself, are we recording this?
Yes, we are. Just started.
Perfect.
Everyone's okay
That's
with
okay.
me recording the meeting?
I have no problems with that.
Okay, thank you.
Awesome. Just want to make sure before I get too ahead of myself here.
Right, just started, yeah.
Awesome. So with chronic Lyme, there's really a profound effect on people's lives. So some of the many symptoms include fatigue, sleep impairment, joint pain, muscle aches, depression, cognitive impairment, neuropathy, cardiac symptoms, and immune and hormonal dysfunction. So this creates a lot of very complex symptoms that are very hard to target and manage. There are a few different popular views about Lyme, and I do want to touch on them just because they have such a huge impact on people's lives and how they experience being diagnosed with Lyme disease. The Infectious Diseases Society of America says that Lyme is hard to find but easy to cure with a short course of antibiotics, and they deny the existence of chronic Lyme, saying instead that there's a post-Lyme syndrome, which I thought was kind of interesting because, on the other hand, the International Lyme and Associated Diseases Society recommends individual treatment plans based on symptom severity and how the patient responds. So they look for any presence of any sort of tick-borne illness, and they take a very collaborative approach to patient care. ALADS is very unlikely to withhold treatment based on pending results of any testing, and they believe that ongoing symptoms of Lyme reflect active infection, which should be treated like any other active infection condition such as tuberculosis. So this seems to be a much more effective approach just based on what I've heard from people who have experienced Lyme disease, because they target the individual person instead of what they presume to be Lyme disease. And just a heads up, there's going to be a picture of some ticks on the next slide in case you're arachnophobic. I want to talk about ticks themselves because they are very important in talking about Lyme disease. So they're arachnids, not insects, and the deer ticks are the primary carrier in our area, and they look just like this. Usually it is the younger stage of ticks. I've forgotten the name. I believe it's the nymph. Those are the ones that are going to be tending to transmit Lyme disease. So experts disagree about how long it takes for Lyme to actually be transmitted, even though they do say that the longer the tick stays embedded, the higher the probability is of contracting Lyme. They're less active in hot and dry climates, so they hang around in leaves and damp, cooler areas. And to remove a tick, you can use tweezers and carefully grasp it as close to the skin as you can and pull straight out from your skin, like pretty much as perpendicular as you can get. And you should disinfect the area later as you would with any other bug bite or open wound. Ideally, you should be saving it for testing alive if you can, because that way they can tell if the tick was a carrier of Lyme and they don't need to monitor you and can get in there and start treating you before anything crops up too majorly. You should be labeling the container with your name, the date, the site of the bite, and how long it was attached for. IGeneX and Tick Report both take ticks, so if you ever have a tick that needs to be tested, you can Google them. You may be able to take them to a more local lab service. I'm not 100% sure on that. And just to talk about prevention briefly, because, ideally, if you can avoid being bitten by a tick in the first place, that's best case scenario. If you're going hiking, you should be wearing long sleeves and pants in a light color, and avoid underbrush if possible, because they like to hang out in piles of firewood and leaves and underbrush and that kind of thing. So you can get repellent for your skin and clothes. You should be talking to a wildlife expert about this sort of thing. There's various types of repellent and how effective they are and how you should be applying them and everything. Also be sure to periodically check for ticks and shower once you get home. And before washing your clothes, if you would like, you can run your clothes in a hot dryer for about 10 minutes to kill any ticks. And for your pets, please talk to your vets about any tick prevention. I know some vets, they recommend taking a med just before hiking. Some of them you take it monthly or so. It really just depends on what's best for you and your animals. And we do have a guest speaker tonight I'm very excited about. It's my pleasure to introduce Riley Lindbergh, and he's going to talk to us about his experience with Lyme disease.
Hey guys, can everyone hear me? Is that okay on your end? Awesome. Hey, well, just let me know. I've got kind of my speech a little bit written out here in front of me. So if it just looks super weird or you can't see me or my eyes looks like they're darting all over the place, just let me know, Kaylee and anyone else. But overall, I'm so glad that I can be here tonight with all of you, or at least as here as we can be via Zoom and our world as it is right now. But I'm just absolutely to thank Kaylee Hodgson and the entire IDEAA and everyone else that made this event possible. Thank you so much for the time and care and commitment that you put into this fantastic association. The work that you have done, that you do, and that you will continue to facilitate matters so much. So thank you for allowing me to be a part of that and to share my story this evening. And also Kaylee, thank you for your presentation. That was excellent. And I really appreciate your words to kind of just segue into my talk. And as you all know, tonight's event is about Lyme. And so the reason that I'm here is to share my own Lyme story with you. But before I do that, I'd just like to take a quick moment to acknowledge any of you in the audience who either know someone with Lyme, or maybe have been diagnosed with it yourself, or any of you who have your own history with a particular challenge that's either been invisible to or misunderstood by the people around you, or is difficult for any other reason. And to any of you for whom these words resonate, I just want you to know that in this shared space that we have here together tonight, and on this night and in this event, you are cared for, you are supported. And my hope is that nights like this and associations like the IDEAA will help to bring light and solidarity to places and experiences that can often feel dark and lonely and isolated. We're always in this together, but it's nights like this when we stand and shine our lights together that we truly illuminate the world. So thank you so much for giving me the opportunity to speak. Now, before I just start into my speech properly, can everyone still hear me? Is it okay? It looked like my internet was a little bit sketchy for a moment there. So am I glitching majorly or is it okay?
Seems good now.
Awesome. Okay.
Thanks.
Well, let me know, cut me off at any point if I'm cutting out. But yeah, thank you so much, guys, for making this night possible. And as I segue into kind of my own journey, I just want to say that my journey is just one story. It's just one story and one individual journey. But I hope that my words with you tonight might speak to a message that authentically represents the individual experiences of so many others that have also struggled through the strenuous and often very uncertain journey of battling Lyme. For me personally, my journey began almost exactly 11 years ago. At that time, I could never have imagined that I'd be here with this story to tell. Never in a million years would I wish this to be anyone else's story. Because it's a story of needless suffering, of horrific and life-threatening debilitation, and a long, long road back to health. My journey began in September of 2009. And that fall, I was beginning grade 11. I was excited about the year ahead. I was looking forward to hockey and school and friends. And in a nutshell, my life was busy, it was full, and it was really good overall. And the year actually started off quite well that fall. But unfortunately, about a month into that school year, I came home one day feeling really ill. And because it had come on so unexpectedly, I just passed it off as a nasty flu bug, thinking that I'd be sick for a couple of days or at the most a couple of weeks. And unfortunately, that just wasn't the case. From that day forward, I only continued to get worse and worse and worse. Days and months passed, and even though I was experiencing all sorts of terrible symptoms, nobody could figure out what was wrong with me. No matter how many specialists I saw or how many tests I took, we still couldn't figure out what was going on. Needless to say, this became a very stressful time for both myself and my family. The more tests that came back negative, the more doctors started to look at me as if it was all in my head, or as if I was just making it up. Even though I'd lost over 40 pounds in just a few months, and my veins had collapsed to the point that it took 5 or 6 or sometimes even more tries just for a nurse to draw blood, the doctors seemed to look at me as if test results alone and nothing else were all that mattered. From here, it became a grueling year of countless visits to the ER, hospital stays, appointments with specialists, and endless tests and procedures, hoping to get to the bottom of what was going on. We traveled from doctor to doctor, carrying around a detailed list of the 45 plus symptoms that I was dealing with at that time. Symptoms that I didn't realize then were beginning to tell the classic story of the progression of Lyme disease. Some of you may know exactly what I'm talking about, but it's hard for me to adequately describe the anguish or sense of helplessness that being misunderstood, overlooked, and sometimes even outrightly mistreated made me feel during this time of suffering and uncertainty. Overall, and along the way, we did encounter many well-meaning and competent doctors who genuinely cared and wanted to help. But when test results continued to reveal no diagnosis, they just shrugged their shoulders and sent me on to another specialist, hoping someone else would figure out this mystery kid. Never once did any of them bring Lyme disease forward as something to even consider. And although the doctors never brought it up themselves, my parents and I often outrightly asked doctors, could this be Lyme disease? Is it possible? And these are just a few of the responses that we received. Absolutely not. We have no Lyme disease in Alberta. No way. There's no Lyme carrying ticks here. That's such a rare disease. And besides, none of his symptoms fit in anyways. The most common thing that we heard though was that Lyme disease is hard to catch and easy to treat. This couldn't be further from the truth. Can we test him anyways? My parents asked. No, we have no reason to suspect Lyme. One doctor even said to my mom, it's more likely that he has HIV than Lyme disease. Sure, he says he's not sexually active, but we all know what kids say. And then he proceeded to wink and give my mom a nudge. Sorry, I just said something from the meeting. Are we still, you can all hear me?
Yep.
Okay, awesome.
All good.
And so, yeah, so this one doctor, after I'd met with him and we were deciding on what would be next after the treatments that I'd already, or the tests that I'd already done, he said, it's more likely that he has HIV than Lyme. Sure, you know, even though he says he's sexually active, not sexually active, we all know what kids say these days and what they're doing behind the scenes. And then he proceeded to wink and give my mom a nudge with his elbow. It was horrible. The most unsettling fact of all, though, is that my story of the onset of illness is not unique to me. This story is just a small representation of the countless, horrific, and traumatizing journeys that so many others have walked. And that's why I'm here tonight. And that's why events like these matter. And why the IDEAA matters. The beginnings of clarity came to me in my own journey after I received test results back from the US confirming that I did indeed have Lyme disease, along with several other co-infections that ticks carry. At this time, we naively assumed that this was good news. Finally, I'd be heard and get help, we thought. Finally, I'd have a path to follow. That wasn't the case, however. Immediately and adamantly, I was told that even with the test results, no treatment or care would be available to me in Canada. American lab tests were wrong, they said. Stop believing that you have Lyme disease. I was absolutely dumbfounded. By this time, I was completely bedridden, and my mom had become my full-time nurse and caregiver. I'd lost even more weight and was now in life-threatening condition. My vitals were alarmingly unstable, and the infection had clearly impacted my brain. as I was experiencing a multitude of neurological symptoms. In reality, I was dying. The intensity of medical decisions and emergencies that my family and I were forced to triage together as a family and on our own was something that no family and no individual should ever have to go through. I'm just finding my place. It just switched off. I'm so sorry, guys. And so, as a result of this, I was forced to go to the USA to seek immediate and urgent support. And even though before that, we'd had a couple of amazing doctors who'd stood by us here in Canada, by the diagnosis and by the test results, and they did do their best to help me. They all said that they felt ill prepared to treat this life-threatening presentation of Lyme disease, that my presentation had progressed too far for their knowledge or abilities. And so I went to the United States to seek treatment. And although Lyme is often greatly misunderstood there as well, there are Lyme specialists there who have access to more reliable tests and are not as at risk of losing their licenses if they choose to acknowledge and treat Lyme. But this is not the case in Canada. There are a handful of physicians, as I alluded to, and other practitioners here who are treating Lyme disease. But most of this is outside the bounds of accessible healthcare. And as such, they're very constrained in what they can offer. And as Kaylee mentioned earlier in her PowerPoint, there are differing views about the existence, diagnosis, and treatment for Lyme. And sadly, this confusion has resulted in a highly polarized debate within the medical community that leaves those of us most in need of support caught perilously in no man's land, unable to access the treatment that we so desperately need. Detected early, Lyme is so much easier to treat without lingering complications. If we had reliable testing and medical education geared towards accurate Lyme literacy, so much needless suffering could be prevented, but we're just not there yet. And so I became part of the growing exodus of Canadian Lyme patients who are forced to seek treatment beyond our borders. Left untreated in the early days, Lyme becomes much more complex and difficult to treat. The spectrum of severity ranges greatly from person to person, and that's partly why it can be so hard to diagnose and treat. In my own journey, however, the severity only continued to worsen. And just a quick warning, the next part of my talk is a little bit grim, so just bear with me because it does get brighter from there. So just bear with me for the next couple of moments. Because within a year of my Lyme diagnosis, the muscles of my face became completely paralyzed, and I could no longer speak. I couldn't walk unassisted or perform even the most basic of personal care tasks like eating, going to the bathroom, bathing. I became wheelchair dependent entirely. I lost even more weight, almost 70 pounds in total, and was basically a living skeleton. A particularly difficult aspect of Lyme is the way in which it can trigger a whole host of debilitating neurological symptoms. And throughout my journey, I experienced many of these. For instance, during my sickest days, sensory input of any kind, light, touch, sound, movement of any kind, even just the soft movement of leaves outside my window was intolerable for me. In those moments, I felt like I'd been tied up in a cage, helpless, unable to speak, and completely bedbound. These challenges, along with a laundry list of other wild and bizarre symptoms, including severe hand tremors, digestive shutdown, a face that was swollen beyond recognition, and so hot that I was peeling through layers of skin from the inside out, along with severe chronic pain and many other challenges, left me unable to do much of anything at all. In those days, reading, listening to music, watching TV, or even just spending time with my family was completely impossible. As a result, I spent nearly 3 years lying in a dark room on my own with custom-made earplugs in my ears because of the sensory challenges, and my eyes completely closed. Season after season, my clothes, my hockey skates, my school books and skis all stayed in my closet, totally unused. There wasn't a single part of my former life that I was able to participate in. But again, this is not my story alone. Every Lyme patient and family that I have come to know over time experiences this chronic crisis on a daily basis. There is nothing easy about Lyme, not the diagnosis, the treatment options, the political and medical obstacles, or the life, relationships, and finances it robs from those who live with it. It is a devastating reality for so many that no speech could ever fully articulate. Whew. Okay, I know that's a lot to hear, and my intention is not at all to just paint a doom and gloom picture or to discourage all of you. In fact, it's quite the opposite. I don't speak to the extremeness of symptoms or journey to scare you or to be overly dramatic, but rather and simply to highlight the full reality that Lyme is and has been for so many. This reality, along with so many other mysterious and invisible illnesses, disabilities, and challenges, require our attention and acknowledgement. And that's what my talk is really about, because there is hope. As you can tell from my presence here tonight, serious chronic Lyme is treatable, and caught and treated in the early stages, the chances of serious long-term illness are significantly diminished. To those of you who'd never heard of Lyme before tonight, my hope is that after this evening, you will talk with friends and family about it and reach out to your fellow students, colleagues, and peers to raise awareness. I don't at all want to spread a message of fear. So please, by all means, just because ticks are out there, still go to parks, hike in the mountains, go camping. But as Kaylee spoke to earlier, just be smart and do your due diligence. When you go out in nature, put some bug spray around your ankles, around your hiking shoes and your socks, other areas that you think might be wise. And do tick checks during the time that you're out in the woods, or you're in a park, or you've just been lying in the grass to sunbathe. Especially the places of your body that are warm and tucked away, like your armpits or your groin. And consider carrying a tick remover, like tweezers, or there's others you can see on the CanLyme website. And there's some specialized tick removers out there as well. So think about carrying one in your purse or your backpack so that you just have it on hand in case you ever do discover a tick on your body. So you can remove it right away and keep it and send it away to be tested. You can get lots more information too around preventing tick encounters on the CanLyme website, which I think you'll see. I think Kaylee at the end of her presentation highlights CanLyme a little bit. So we can talk about that more too, but I think that information is there. Now, I'm not going to go into treatment options a lot in this talk, just because there isn't time. But if you do get a tick bite, again, refer to the CanLyme website to figure out what your options are. And just remember that some ticks don't even carry Lyme. And when caught early, chronic Lyme is very likely preventable. And even if we switch over to chronic Lyme, This is also a treatable condition. Again, I won't go into huge depth and detail around the various treatment options that are out there, but just know that there are many. Personally, I tried just about everything under the sun. Some helped, some made things worse, some were relatively neutral. But in the end, I found doctors that did help me make progress. And then at the end of my journey, I went through a program based in brain science and the study of neuroplasticity to reach the final stage of full recovery. And now it's been nearly 7 years since I ended my journey with Lyme, and I am absolutely and totally recovered. And so the reality here is that there is hope. There is hope with Lyme. And at the end of the day, it all comes down to advocacy, awareness, and widespread acknowledgement and support within the global medical community. My hope with tonight's talk is to be one more voice, and hopefully a voice that will inspire you to raise yours as well, to reach out and to educate those around you. Because together we can be the ripple effect that waves out to promote and catalyze real change. So whether you'd never heard about Lyme before tonight, whether you know someone who is dealing with it, or are dealing or have dealt with it yourself, please know that there is hope, and that I'm so grateful you came tonight to listen. Thank you for the time that it's taken to be here and to listen to this talk. And thank you to the IDEAA for making this night possible. Because invisible, misunderstood, and marginalized diseases, disabilities, and conditions can be so scary, so isolating, and so confusing. But we need not walk these paths alone. If you have dealt with challenges or circumstances in your life that have made you feel other or discriminated against, please know that you are cared for, loved, and supported by many. And if you have never dealt with chronic, misunderstood, or marginalized challenges, please come back to other events like this one, and then go out and add your light to the global lantern of advocacy and solidarity. One pebble may not tip the balance scale, but together as a collection of beautiful stones, we make and move mountains. Now, I'm going to stay on for a little bit to answer questions if any of you have some. But before I end my speech, I just want to leave you with a quote from John Lewis, who is an amazing, or was an amazing US congressman and advocate for civil rights and social rights of all kinds, who just recently passed away. And his words are simple and short, but they're very profound. You are a light. You are the light. Never let anyone, any person, or any force dampen, dim, or diminish your light. Let's be those lights together. Thank you so much, guys. It's been such a pleasure to speak, and I'm more than happy to stay on for a bit and answer questions if anybody has some. And so I'll just turn it over to Kaylee or anyone else who'd like to lead us from here.
Thank you so much for taking the time to speak with us. We really appreciate the time and the emotional labor it took.
Thank you so much. We really appreciate it.
My pleasure, guys. It's just an absolute privilege. Thank you for opening up this platform.
So if anybody has any questions they'd like to ask Riley, go right ahead. Or if not, I can just keep her going.
I guess I have a question.
Yeah, sure.
Did you join any support groups when you found out that you had Lyme disease?
Yeah, well, yeah, go ahead.
Were they helpful? Oh, sorry, I totally cut you off.
No worries. I was the one who cut you off. It's all good. Yeah, anything more you wanted to add to your question, or can I jump in there?
I'm done my question. Yeah.
Hey, sure. So I did, but it was tricky for me because things progressed so rapidly and so quickly. I wasn't even able to really communicate with my family, let alone be on Facebook or WhatsApp or a part of support groups. So there are lots out there, and there's lots of wonderful Facebook groups and different pieces. And I was connected very minimally for a short period of time to some of those at the beginning. And then I was just too ill. I was too ill to be a part of any of that because I was just really flat on my back in bed for about 3 years. And so my parents did, though. My parents reached out a lot because they needed support, because things, at that point, I wasn't really managing my treatment process whatsoever because I couldn't. It was my mom and my dad who were meeting with doctors and searching for new procedures or protocols or treatment options. So they reached out a lot, and it was tremendously helpful for them. A lot of what we learned about and the treatments that I was led to over time came from their presence in those support groups and the collaboration of people. Sometimes people will call themselves Lymies, and so the collaboration of people, either people dealing with Lyme or friends and family members trying to support. So yeah, I'll pause there, but I hope that answers your question.
No, yeah, that totally does. Thank you.
Hey, you're so welcome.
If nobody else has any questions, I may just keep her going. All right, feel free to interrupt me at any time if anything comes up. So the charity of interest for this period is CanLyme, the Canadian Lyme Disease Foundation, and any donations received between now and our next info night will benefit Lyme disease research. So I really chose this organization because they've made such a positive impact in the lives of people with Lyme disease, and they focus a lot on research. And because it's such a misunderstood and misdiagnosed and underdiagnosed condition, I feel that medical research is really the way to kind of get it going so far so that we can get our doctors and medical system better in gear to better support people with Lyme disease. So next, it's time to focus on October's goodness, words are hard. It's time to vote on October's diagnostic focus. There's several mental health related awareness days in October. So our choices relate to different mental illness diagnostic umbrellas. So you can either use the link if you can see it or not. You can use the QR code on your smartphone to vote on which one you'd want to learn about. Our categories are ADHD and autism, personality and mood disorders, dissociative and schizophrenia spectrum disorders, obsessive compulsive and other related disorders, and trauma and anxiety disorders. And I've kind of grouped them here based on symptoms or causality or just because they kind of make sense. So I'm going to give you a couple of minutes to go ahead and open that up before I keep it going. And if you need a couple more minutes here, I can get Robin to add the QR code or the link to the next email newsletter, or this recording is going to be up on our website under, I think it's the blog section, blog or events. I can't remember what it is.
It's called events. I'll also put the
Events,
QR code on the website when I get a chance. Perfect. And that'll link you there.
Perfect. Yeah. So you can access this whenever. There's no real rush here. And I do want to touch on the awareness days in October, just because I think it's interesting. Very mental health based. So it's ADHD Awareness Month, Breast Cancer Awareness Month, Bullying Prevention Month, and Down Syndrome Awareness Month, as well as Mental Illness Awareness Week from October 4th to 10th, Depression Screening Day on October 8th, World Mental Health Day on October 10th, and Health Education Week from October 20th to 24th. And there's way more than this, of course. And of course, it's never a bad day to be aware of health and disability related issues. You should be looking into this all the time. It's super interesting, if nothing else. And you can help make the world a better place for people who might be struggling that you may not realize. So thank you so much for attending. This is our very first info night. I'm super glad we had so many people turn up. Our next info night is going to be on October 22nd. And keep your eyes in your inbox for more information on fundraising for CanLyme.
And also, I'd just like to add something. If you would like to donate to the charity that Kaylee mentioned earlier, you can just go to IDEAA.ca. That's IDEAA.ca, and there's a donation button on there, which will link you to our PayPal. You can donate there, and we're going to be, donating all of the proceeds to, or all of the donations to that charity. It just makes it easier to just have it PayPal there, but you're also free to, donate directly to that charity. Thank you so much.
Awesome. Thank you. Yeah, I meant to mention that. Sorry. Thank you for putting that in
No
there.
problem at all.
All right. Does anyone have any questions or anything? All right. Thank you so much for attending. We really appreciate it. And thanks
Thank you
again
so
to
much.
Riley.
Thanks again, Riley,
Super
so much.
grateful to have you here tonight.
Hey, of course, guys. Thank you so much. And I just wish you all the best as an association. This is so important, the work that you're doing, and it means the world to me personally. And I know it will and does to so many others as well. So thank you, and know that I'll try to promote you in the ways that I can.
Perfect.
In my
Appreciate
world.
it.
Yeah.
Thank you so much.
And thank you for all that you're doing to bring things, just to discussions and conversations, because that's the starting point. This is how we reach out and make impact, is to start conversations like this. So thank you. It's very meaningful, and especially to me personally. So thank you, guys.
Thank you so much.
It was
We
great to
really
meet you.
appreciate it.
Likewise. It's a pleasure. I wish we were in person. I could shake your hands or at least say hello. But I wish you all the best, and that day may come soon. So let's hope for that too.
Totally.
Yeah.
All right. Well, I think that concludes our first info night.
It does.
Awesome. See you, Riley.
Thanks, Riley.
Thank you so much.